This video will show you how to find the domain and range graphically for a function. The domain are always x values where the function exists, and on the graph we'll look from left to right. The range are y values where the function exists, and on the graph we'll look from the bottom to the top. I have two functions drawn here on the screen. We're going to find the domain and range for each one. In the first example, we have a function here that is like a little line segment, and we're going to look at the domain first, and the domain are x values. We take a look on the left, and there's no function over here. Where the function starts is at this point right here, and the x value is 0. The function continues to go over to the right down to this point, and it ends at the value 2. So a domain will go from 0 to 2, and we use brackets around 0 and 2 because we have a closed dots at each endpoint. Now the range, we'll look at the y values. The y values start at the bottom here at this point, which is at 0 on the y-axis, and the function goes up, and it ends at this top point, which is at 4 on the y-axis. So the range goes from 0 up to 4. We're using brackets again because of the closed dots. Now let's take a look at this other function on the right side of the screen. The domain again are going to be x values. So there's nothing on the left side until we get over here, and this value is at -3 on the x-axis. The function continues from -3, goes up, and then comes down and stops at +2. So that will be the domain. The domain goes from -3 to +2, and we have closed dots again at both -3 and +2, so we'll use brackets. Now let's find the range for the same function. The range are the y values, and if we look at the y-axis, there's nothing at the bottom, and we work up, and the first time we encounter a function is right here. That y value is at 0 for both of those points. The function continues up, and the highest point that it goes up to is at the value 2. So the range is from 0 to 2. Those are the y values where the function exists. All the values from 0 up to 2. Now the next functions we're going to graph in the calculator and find the domain and range. The first function I want to graph is y equals the absolute value of x minus 4. We want to find the domain and the range. So first of all, we need to bring up the calculator, and I'll go and type this in, the y equals. We need to start with the absolute value, so to get that we press the math key, you press the right arrow, and then command number 1 is ABS. Type in x minus 4, and always close parentheses. I'm going to press zoom and number 6. Okay, here's a look at the function. It's a V-shaped graph, and it looks like it decreases down to the value 4 and then continues on to the right. So I'm going to sketch this graph over on the screen. All right, so that's the approximation of the graph. Just draw it the best that you can. Now we'll look at the domain first, and the domain are x values. So we look along the x-axis, and the function continues to go to the left. So since a function keeps going to the left, the x value associated with that would be at negative infinity. That's where the function's going, that's where it's coming from on the left side. The function continues down to positive 4, but then it keeps on going. So the domain doesn't stop at 4. Since the function keeps going to the right, it's going to be all the values where the function is. The function keeps going to the right side, so it's going over to positive infinity eventually. So the domain for this function would be all real numbers, or negative infinity to infinity. Keep in mind that we need to include all the values on the left to the right. Notice that there are points all along the function for every single x value. Now let's look at the range. For the range, we look at the y-axis. And at the bottom of the y-axis, there is not a function until we get up to here. The function starts at the value 0. 0 on the y-axis. And the function continues to go up in both directions. So actually what happens is the function continues up to the very top of the y-axis, and there is positive infinity. So it's the whole range of where the function starts and where the function goes. It starts at 0 and it goes on up to infinity. So this is our range, 0, infinity. I have a bracket at 0 because of the closed dot, and infinity always will have a parenthesis. Now let's take a look at another function. This time, let's graph f of x equals a square root of x plus 2. And we want to find the domain and the range again. Press the y equals key, clear out the previous function. I'm going to press second square root x plus 2 and close the parentheses. Hit zoom number 6. Alright, so this is a look at the graph. Looks like it starts at negative 2 and continues upwards to the right. I'm going to go over here and sketch the graph. Okay, so the graph starts at negative 2 and goes over to the right. Now let's do the domain first. The domain are the x values from left to right. So over here on the left side there is not a function, but the function starts at negative 2. So that's where the domain will begin. Negative 2 with a bracket, because it has a closed dot, there's a function there at negative 2. And the function continues to the right. So on the right side of the x-axis, it will eventually go to infinity. So the domain is negative 2 to infinity. Now we'll look at the y-axis for the range. The range begins at the bottom of the y-axis, and there's no graph down here. But there is a graph starting at this value and that is 0 on the y-axis. Now the function goes up. It actually goes across a y-axis, but we're looking for all the values for the range. Since the function is increasing forever, it will eventually rise up to positive infinity on the y-axis. So this will be our range, 0, infinity.